Welcome to the Breakfast Club, everyone. How's everyone doing?
Good.
Good morning.
Good morning.
It's too early in the morning. It's Saturday. You know, we're a bit like, oh, let's try and wake up. Anyway, I guess we can. This is the first time we meet, so we can just like talk a little bit about ourselves and like what pride means to you. And anyway, my name is Graciela. I go by she/her. Who wants to go? Wants to go? Dillon.
So yeah, I'm Dillon, and I use pronouns they and them.
Yeah.
I'm really excited to be here.
Yeah.
Talk about pride. Very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My name is Sanita, and I use the pronouns she/her. Also very thrilled to be here.
Yeah, we do.
My name is RJ. I use the pronouns he and they. I'm also pleased to be here.
That's awesome. All right, so how's everyone doing? Good? Energetic?
It's Pride.
It's
Yeah,
Pride weekend.
Pride weekend.
Yeah.
I'm exhausted already.
Have you done any of the events? Yeah.
It hasn't even started, but I'm already tired.
Day for
Pride
pay.
week.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about Pride and like what it means for folks, and you know what it has meant for you in the past few years to have Pride in Ottawa. How you feel about Pride in Ottawa in general? Anyone has any jumping thoughts, conclusions, arguments, commentaries, happy stories?
Wow. There's so many
I'm
options.
giving you all the range.
Yeah, so I guess I can talk about like a little bit about it first.
Yeah.
So I have like the awesome, I guess, honor privilege of being the Grand Marshal of Pride this year. So I'm really hoping that we can, you know, party like it's 1971, which means, you know, in 1971 was Canada's first queer protest, the We Demand protest that happened on Parliament Hill. So I'm really hoping that, you know, we can reclaim Pride, make it political again. So that's kind of what I'm thinking about this Pride, particularly in the current context. So yeah, that's definitely something. Yeah.
What about you, RJ? What are your thoughts? So you're pretty involved in Pride this year.
Yeah, mostly through work.
Yeah.
And I think too, a lot of the things that I often don't see in Pride is just like representation of Indigenous people. So for me, making space for that has like become a little more important than some of the other things, and just so folks actually know, like, yeah, Native people are here. Also, like LGBTQ being Two-Spirit and how that means. I think a lot of folks have a different definition of Two-Spirit depending on kind of how they feel. It's like very much something that is for Indigenous people of like these lands, but it's mostly at least a representation of like being queer, being trans, and kind of how that intersects with being Indigenous, what that looked like in a pre-colonial tense.
Yeah.
But yeah, I find like Pride hasn't really been in that inclusive of Indigenous folks, so I've been really working on like creating that. But this year I kind of like want to take a spin around like looking at climate change in Pride and also bringing different movements together. So both of those things I'm extremely passionate about, but also I think we need to come together as like queer people and queer movements with the climate justice movement if we actually want to continue to celebrate.
For sure. Those are really good points, and you bring in a different perspective and stuff to take into account. You, Sanita?
Well,
How do you?
I'm going to riff off of both of them and say that, you know, the first, I think there's, my friend has a t-shirt that says, the first Pride, the first gay Pride was a riot.
Yeah.
And if we look at, you know, Dillon's comment, which is in 1971, the first Pride event was actually a protest march, right?
Yeah.
And so if we look at the beginnings of Pride, which was really a sexual and gender liberation movement, to, you know, and we owe a lot to trans people as well when we think about, you know, Stonewall and the riots of Pride. But to be totally frank, I'm trying to sort of balance out being positive and keeping a celebratory feel and wanting to say, of course, Pride continues to be incredibly relevant and important. But if we also want to be frank about it, where is Pride today? I went to, last Sunday, I went to the Montreal Pride.
Yes.
And it was the longest, biggest Pride event I've ever been to in my life. And I have to say, what I saw was a lot of banks.
Yeah.
I saw Walmart.
Yeah.
I saw, all kinds of
big corporations.
I saw a lot, and you know what? I'm not necessarily, I don't want to say something utterly negative and dismissive and say, it's not. Of course, Pride is for everybody, and people work within neoliberal systems. But, I saw the majority of what I saw was that. And the last time I was at the Ottawa Pride, I saw, a lot of churches and a lot of religious organizations, again, a lot of banks. And what I saw was more of that than maybe, Indigenous people or trans people or lesbians or LGBTQ people, two-spirited people. That was the minority. So I think that's what I want to talk about. So I'm not going to the Pride event to Ottawa this Sunday. I'm going to the Dyke March this week. It starts with a protest speech.
Yeah.
And then there's no corporations, we just march together. And it feels more like the beginning.
Yeah.
Because our work isn't over. And you talk about climate change, right?
Yeah,
if we don't address that,
we're all gonna be
it's
gone.
Where are we gonna march?
Yeah. And
also,
who is more affected by climate change, right? Like which communities are more affected?
And also, like, TD Bank is one of the biggest sponsors of like Ottawa Pride, but also they sponsor the pipelines, which are also inherently against Indigenous people's rights. It infringes against Indigenous folks who are also like fighting pipelines, but all of our lives as well.
Exactly.
And not just human lives, if I can say.
Definitely.
I'm doing my PhD in cultural studies, specializing in environmental ethics, and I was just reading a book called The Evolution's Rainbow. And actually, it's not just humans that are genderqueer or that have sexual diversity. This happens across all life forms, not just mammalian or animal life, but plant life and, all kinds of aquamarine life and insects. The gay pride is very human-centric, but, I feel like what you're sort of edging at is that, well, can we make it more multi-species? And if it were more multi-species, well, then maybe we'd realize that LGBTQ, two-spirited people, trans people, is just a rainbow of evolution, and everything is at stake.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah,
I like that. So let's talk a little bit more about like the corporate pride. I know we have strong feelings about it, so I want to talk a little bit more like about the evolution and the corporate pride. It's always it feels like a little bit kind of what you touched on, and like a loss of space in a way, that you feel like everything is being taken over by corporations and heteronormative, like a way to make it pleasing for hetero audiences as well, which is not how Pride came about and Pride was. So Dillon, do you have any burning thoughts about like the loss, like also about like the loss of space and corporate and all of that shabam bam?
Yeah, I mean that is a lot. So
that's a big that's a mouthful. It's just I'm trying to think and I'm like so many thoughts, but anyway.
No, totally. I mean,
you're gonna get me. So.
No, there's definitely a lot of thoughts. I mean, like I said before, like even most people don't even know why Ottawa Pride is even at the end of August, and it is really to commemorate those protests that happened in 1971, which were actually in response to the decriminalization of homosexuality legislation that happened in 1969. So it's actually the 50th anniversary of decriminalization. But what decriminalization did, and I think Pierre Elliott Trudeau had that famous saying, like, we need to take it out of, the bedrooms of the,
the people.
Yeah, like that whole shebang.
The government doesn't belong in the bedroom.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Not that I know that much what he says, but.
And there's more to that. Because the sentences after that were so, like, but not between men of a certain age. Like, that was cut out.
Right, and then what ended up happening was, not only, everybody thinks like decriminalization was like this huge thing, but what the protest was really about was that the fact that after that decriminalization policy legislation came out, there actually was more criminalization of queer and trans people in public spaces. So you saw the bathhouse raids, you saw the way that public spaces became more regulated and surveilled and monitored by the state, by police.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's like a huge thing about Pride. So we're talking about 50 years of decriminalization, but actually we're not talking about the whole piece around public spaces and what that means and how do we reclaim those spaces. I mean, a lot of people don't think Ottawa really has a lot of queer spaces, but I would argue that they do. But we are seeing like the rise of gentrification in our neighborhoods. It's not accessible, especially like a lot of queer and trans people live in poverty or are on like the low socioeconomic scale. So I think it's really important for us to start talking about not just like how Pride is so corporate, but like how everything is so inaccessible in so many ways, whether it's for like people living with disabilities, or if you know, if you don't have the money to be able to go and buy that fancy food at those restaurants that we're talking about. So I think like, yeah, absolutely. We need to like talk about how Pride is a political piece and how we need to reclaim those spaces. I don't know exactly how, but we should definitely do that.
And I like that idea of space, right? Because we were talking about earlier a little bit about like queer spaces in Ottawa and how people just don't think there are that many, or like some of them are inaccessible, or some of them are like have a very hetero dynamic, and I don't know. I was wondering,
Ottawa's
also very white too, right? And like it feels very excluding to people like people of color, Indigenous folks, Black people. So what do you think, RJ? Like, are there any spaces in the city that you like to frequent, or you feel welcome to, or places you don't like, and why? That's totally cool too.
Artie's like, I'll get out my list.
Here it is.
Frequent Kind Space, because but I have a bias. Kind Space, but Kind Space was like the first like LGBTQ organization I ever went to. So I think I went there with like a lot of intention to be like, Two-Spirit people are important, but they're like, yeah, they are. So it's just like there wasn't an inherent debate that I thought I was like going to anticipate. So I feel like that essentially made me feel a lot more welcome, and also like seeing that the executive director was like a person of color, I also felt more inclined to like stay. I feel like if it was any other situation where it wasn't like a person of color, I wouldn't have been interested. And I find like I do go to LGBTQ events and I'm like, this is too white, and then I end up leaving. So I don't really like actually frequent tons and tons of different queer events unless I'm bringing like a giant group of people. So it'll feel like my own event almost.
I bring the party.
Like actually, I'm doing that today. So
be grateful. I'm bringing the party.
But also too, like I think a lot of the times in this discussion around like, I hear a lot of folks being like, yeah, there's not a lot of queer representation, but also in general, like I don't see queer representation of Indigenous people. Correct. So I don't really care that there's no representation. And I'm like, yeah, no, this is literally just another day for me. So I think that also like has a lot to say about what issues exist within LGBTQ community, because they're very white. So like for me, like, yeah, bringing a group of Indigenous people into Pride, regardless of the fact that it's a corporation, is like important to me, because I want those young people to have that like space and to be able to be around like other LGBTQ people, because it's such a taboo subject in a lot of our community. So like that kind of makes it more, it's more important to me to like actually represent what my communities want kind of over my own needs, because I think like I'm at a very different space in time in terms of my politics around this versus like a lot of other people who are just getting introduced to queer spaces. So I'm like, it doesn't matter, like I actually have a goal, and it's really to bring these different communities together. So again, like maybe space isn't necessarily like, when I go into a space, I'm mostly assessing like, would this be welcoming for another Indigenous person? And if it's not, then I'm like, yeah, don't go to that one.
Yeah, and I agree, right? Like I feel like I study, I'm in comms and I study media, so media representation in general, and I feel like a lot of the popular sort of image of queerness is white, and it's very mainstream, and it's, you know, the very stereotypical two gay dudes with the dog and
the underwear
and like living in a fancy apartment, and you know, in Vancouver they live in the West End, you know, and it's this very privileged life, and I don't think it really
got them those jobs.
Yes, correct, right? So it's like, so what are we bringing here, right? And so why do we think about representation in general and claiming space and spaces in Ottawa? What's your take on it?
Well, I was just in listening to both of you, I'm thinking like, how do we define belonging? When, for example, in my case, where I belong is not one community, but many communities. So I was born in ex-Yugoslavia. It was a communist country in Eastern Europe, and there was a war, and there was the genocide of my people, Muslim Bosniaks. And so by the time I came to Canada, I immigrated here in 1997. I have white skin, you know, I'm partly Slav and Eastern European, but we're also partly Ottoman, and that is we're Muslim. So I feel like you know, in terms of my ability to belong to any one community is always sort of mediated and negotiated by the many different communities I belong to, and we all have different communities of belonging, right?
Absolutely.
In terms of like your social class, your family background, your ethnicity, your race, your spirituality, etc. So your politics.
Yeah, your politics.
But for me, what's important is a sense of inclusivity and sensitivity. And what I'm not seeing right now in Pride is a kind of inclusivity and sensitivity to two-spirited LGBTQ people being able to really be properly reflected. Because when I'm seeing, you know, Walmart marching at the Gay Pride,
I can't go back to Walmart.
I'm sorry, because Walmart is not a good employer.
No, it's not.
Walmart, you know, does not have good union relations. You know, Walmart doesn't respect, you know,
labor rights.
Anyway, so but I don't want to sort of be hard on Walmart and say Walmart shouldn't be supportive of LGBTQ people. Of course, Walmart should be inclusive and supportive, but it's in the way that it's done, and there seems to be, for me, I don't know who's making these decisions, who the Pride Committee is. I know they have a lot of probably financial restrictions, and they have to negotiate all kinds of things. So I'd rather have a Pride than no Pride.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm just trying to figure out what kinds of responsibility in our intersectional spaces of belonging, how can we then come at it and be like, okay, this is how I feel like I would belong more. And I saw at the Montreal Pride, again, I was just there last weekend, there was a march of Muslim queers. Now I'm non-religious, but still I'm culturally Muslim. And you know, the posters they had out and what they were saying really resonated with me. Yeah. Because in my city of birth, Sarajevo, you know, people can't form Pride. And the politicians feel like it's too dangerous, it doesn't make any sense. And all kinds of other rhetoric basically aimed at suppressing gender and sexuality diversity. So for me to see that reflected was like you said, you know, you want to see Indigenous people. I was like, oh, that's nice. You know, even if I don't practice Islam, this is kind of a community of one of the many communities that I belong to.
Correct.
So. But there will be Muslims marching in Pride this year.
That's great. I didn't see that. I was there last year and the year before.
But they were there also last year.
Maybe I wasn't there
because
last
it's
year.
totally my partner who's marching in Pride is also Muslim.
That's great. And again, like it's a partial belonging for me because Muslim is in one category where everyone feels comfortable.
So many different,
Like so
we are all different identities, different backgrounds, different. It's like we belong to different communities, right?
And you can be like a colored person that's also really wealthy and working in those corporate worlds.
Yeah, for sure.
You know what I mean? And like it's intersectional.
It is. What's your take on intersectionality? Go.
Great. Okay. Cool. Pulling out some Kimberly Crenshaw. That's cool. No, I was just gonna say actually, like I think another problem too, like we're talking about belonging and intersectionality and like all these kind of issues, but also kind of around. You know, kind of like where we're at today, right? So I think a lot of people really think like we've made it, you know, like there's no reason, like it's a celebration because there's nothing really left to fight for, which is like completely
not true.
You know, when you're looking, exactly, right?
You have lots to fight for.
No, absolutely, and I think like that's kind of like the resonating thing for a lot of like mainstream people. It's like, oh, well, you know, in 2016, like the last hurrah was like getting transgender rights or gender identity expression like legislated. But like we also don't realize that like even though we have human rights, it doesn't necessarily mean that the material realities of queer trans people are like really affected or impacted by those types of legislation, right? So you have communities where there's like really high rates of like discrimination and violence. You know, like we're still like the highest. Like mental health issues, like dying by suicide. You have issues around like housing, lack of employment opportunities. You know, we're just like overrepresented in like so many of these issues, but those kind of never really make it to the forefront of the conversations. Or like, oh, we've made it. Like the last hurrah is like we need to end the blood ban, which is like completely like not true, right? There's like all these issues that we still need to be fighting for. And then on top of that, you know, and this is kind of indicative of what happened last week at Drag Queen Storytime, which is one of the Pride events, is that there were like white supremacists that came and started, you know, spouting hate and all these sorts of things at this like really awesome like family fun friendly event. So we also have this rise of extremism happening around, and who are the people that are often being targeted? Queer and particularly trans people, right? Trans and gender
trans
diverse
people especially,
right? So they become the scapegoat of everything.
Yeah, they do.
Right?
And can I add to that?
Yeah, of course.
And also, even though, for example, there's this rhetoric that we have it all, we can get married, you know, etc., you can transition, so on and so forth. And I think in Canada we also won either last year or the year before that LGBTQ rights go before and beyond religious rights. So there's always little areas of progress which show you that progress is an ongoing thing. Yeah. But I also want to sort of put an emphasis on the fact that, you know, if we become complacent, we can also lose rights. Look at what's happening in Alberta. Right? So it's not because we've gained right that it's stable and it's always going to be as such. If Pride becomes just a sort of a corporate, you know, whitewashing of, you know, just a happy, joyful
digestible
thing.
Kind of enterprise.
It's become like a performance of happiness.
It does. Yeah.
No, it's like I don't want to perform. I am happy and I want to celebrate. And I am proud. But hey, hello, like, you know, there's work to be done.
Yeah, but it's in a performative way. It's like in a way to be digestible for hetero people as well, right? Like which is great. Like, I mean, everyone should be welcome, but it's almost like a how can I make it acceptable for you?
Right, like respectability. Right?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
But again, I do not think, like, in terms of people saying like it should remain a celebration. I'm like, if you want to continue to celebrate, we actually have to take climate change seriously. Though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like, and that's just the reality, and that's why I think like there should be. Like next year, I think Pride should definitely think about like not using TD as a sponsor because TD is the devil. I'm with TD, but I'm actually in the next year looking to leave TD like for good and just going with like a bank that has a lot more ethics in terms of like preserving the environment, and that's something that's super important to me.
Is there one? That's my question.
There is credit unions.
Okay,
so I'm going with the credit union.
But that's different. They're like a bit of an alternative system to the neoliberal mega banks.
No, I'm not going with the bank. I'm going with the credit system.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, queers, we don't really have any money, but
it's true.
The money I do have.
I'm like, the money I do have.
But if you do want to have integrity, can we talk about how much trash is produced at Pride?
Yeah.
I mean,
I know.
It's unbelievable, and you know what an easy shift of policy that could be, and what a great example in leadership. If you want to make, if you want to talk about sustainabilities, and if you want to talk about interspecies distributive justice, and like having a kind of model where, you know, knowing what it's like to be at the receiving end of oppression, etc. Can we stand by our non-human, you know, extended kin to represent their rights too, whether that's water, land, animals, mammals, and plants and trees. But that's really radical, right? I mean, then we're talking about, you know, shifting Pride in a direction that's actually becoming really politicized again. And I think that would be really exciting, actually.
And I think we all have to apply to the board of directors ASAP. When they open the call, all of us were putting our resumes in.
The new Pride committee.
Yeah. I'm gonna do it.
Well, it's weird actually because Pride, the committee, I don't think there is like a general membership, right? Like
no.
So it's
you
kind of
just apply. You apply.
Yeah, like there's a board, but there's no like you know, like if there's like an AGM, it's like the community is kind of speaking on the issues, but I don't think that exists. So I mean, I think we should definitely do that for sure.
So how so I'm a little bit ignorant about the structure of Pride in Ottawa. Is it so it's not like a
I'm confused too.
Do you know a little bit more about it?
Well, not really, because
there's just like a board. There's like a board. Yeah,
there's a board, but like a few years ago there
Who
was
nominates
like a
the board?
Well, I don't even know, to be honest. That's what I'm saying. Like, there's no
Who's making the decisions?
Yeah, I don't
like
know.
it's not like Toronto. That's all I know. It's not like Toronto.
And like a few years ago, like the board kind of had to collapse because there was some issues, like financial issues that happened. So usually they're trying to kind of rebuild.
Right.
But yeah, no, it's kind of hard. It's not very necessarily.
So my question then is, you know, the sort of argument constantly that we're hearing from Pride, the reason that it's becoming so commercialized and corporate is because there's a lack of money.
Yeah.
So then what is the responsibility of the city of Ottawa, you know, the government of Ontario or the federal government?
So you see
the Prime
we have Doug Ford, so another form of discrimination.
We have a gay mayor, he just came out.
Or like Jim Watson, you have to do this now. There's no avoiding it.
I mean,
you had 40 years.
But isn't it a public responsibility for there to be a kind of state funding so that we can disentangle from corporate?
The government should be the one sponsoring all of this stuff, right? And like creating the space. Yes, go ahead.
I was going to say, we should definitely spread a rumor and say, like, Jim Watson said he's going to give his salary to the next Pride Parade.
just 10%,
right? I think that's more realistic.
10%. That would be great.
10% of yearly income.
Well, instead of it being a rumor, maybe we should invite Jim Watson.
You know, be like, Jim Watson, hey.
You know, you've come out of the closet. It was obviously very difficult for you since it took such a long time, and I can understand why it's politically dangerous. I mean, Alex Munter, when he ran as an openly gay man, he didn't get the vote. So I understand.
But like now everyone knew, though.
What's that?
Everyone knew
about Jim. Yeah. But
well, we knew.
Yeah. But everyone knew. Ottawa knew.
Everyone that's
Ottawa's
I think
worst
in the gay
kept
community.
secret. Even people who weren't gay knew.
Yeah. No, a lot of my straight friends were like, I had no idea, and I'm like, really?
Oh,
I know so many people who do.
A lot of people do.
Yeah.
But
even people like who he goes to those meetings with, like people like there was a member of the NDP who actually defended him when someone brought up sexuality like on the floor. Yeah, I know that lady. She's really lovely.
But all that to say, he's come out. So the question is now, you know, you've served the whole community. You know, what kind of obligations and responsibilities do you have to gay pride?
Yeah,
and what,
for sure.
No,
absolutely. I completely agree.
Yeah, no, I think so too.
It's an invitation.
No, it's an invitation too, and also like an accountability thing too, right? Like if you're gonna take up a leadership position, then you should also be fighting for like
the rights
of people, right? Like exactly, because you know not everyone's like in a privileged position like that. So I think you know it's a great platform to use to kind of advance some of these issues that we're talking about.
And we know that Kathleen Wynne created a sex education platform that was inclusive of diverse sexualities. And look at, like, talking about the fight is never over, how quickly our rights can be taken away.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. So let's start to think about. Okay, we have a lot of opinions. About pride, obviously. So let's end up like let's talk about a happy note, like something fluffy. Let's like
what we love about
chill
pride.
It out. Yeah. Are there any cool memories that you like? Something that you want to like. You know, when you're like a baby and you were like,
when I first came out of the womb.
That was my first coming out.
Of the womb. Hello. Any cool memories, RJ? Something fluffy. And
I remember like the night before Pride, I was leaving a Pride event, and for the first time in my life, I seen a dumpster on fire. And it was so wild. It was close to like the venue, and I'm like, wow, this is symbolism. This is symbolism. But honestly, though, I really like that Pride can bring a lot of different people out and a lot of different people to do different types of actions. And it's just like a good time to come together with friends. At least that's what I use it as. It's like an excuse to have a party or something and really just bring other people together to like brainstorm and think of ideas for the future.
Yeah, it's a whole weekend. It's a whole week. Dylan?
You know what? I always really loved Ottawa Pride just because it was not as corporate as when you went to Toronto and Montreal, and you could see everyone in the community. It was a chance to kind of like see what was going on, and people tried really hard to create spaces. Like a few years ago when there was like the Somerset Bank Street Pride that was kind of like the alternative to like the corporate Pride. It was really awesome to see the community come together and do like a sexy car wash and having like an HIV testing site and having like all these really amazing spaces created to kind of fill in all these issues that we're talking about. So I think, I don't know, I still have like, Ottawa Pride is still like in my heart for sure, because I do think that it is one of the last like more, I guess, grassroots sort of thing, although, and I think there's still time to stop it from becoming, you know, like those other ones, right? So I think, I don't know, I have some hope. I'm trying to hold on to hope because it's hard in this day and age.
Yeah, that's true.
So
Sanita?
But I'm always sort of tentative about criticizing Pride because I don't ever want to lose sight of the fact that Pride is incredibly important.
It is.
And one of the reasons it's really important is that, you know, maybe, you know, just 2 decades ago, nobody would have been showing up at these. You know, these could have been dangerous places where you were immediately outed. And being outed could have cost you your job, your family, all kinds of things. So I'm really grateful that we have Pride in Canada. You know, we can organize and have Pride. And we have, you know, the Montreal Pride. I don't know how many people were there.
So many.
Do you know, like, we're talking about tens of thousands of people, right? Compared to like what the first Pride must have been like what
100. It was like less than 100.
So you see what I mean?
And they were like from Toronto and like the States.
But isn't that beautiful that we have this kind of privilege to be able to show up and celebrate and be ourselves. So I love the fact that it exists. I will always show up at some Pride events, even if I don't go to all. And so I just want to highlight that, even though we've just spent 45 minutes sort of, criticizing constructively.
Right.
I think we're all grateful that it's there.
Yeah. But like we can love it and criticize it though at the same time.
Yeah,
of course, those things can coexist.
That's how it's us lefty people. It's always good to be like that.
We love it, but this has to change.
I have my opinions.
But it can improve. But it can improve, and we can work towards the improvement.
Can we play a game really quickly?
Oh God.
Dillon, do you want to play a game? Okay. So I'm thinking.
What
Okay.
kind of
So
game,
can we do
Graciela?
like a rapid fire question situation? I'm gonna ask you 3 questions, and you can just answer me as quickly as possible.
Oh God.
How does that sound?
I take these like.
Yes, please do. Oh shoot, yeah.
Wait, should I give everybody?
Yes, please.
I totally
Alright.
forgot to send my questions.
There we go.
Was there? So are we?
Okay, so what are we doing? We read them?
Read them up and
Rapid fire.
rapid fire.
Should we say them out loud so
Yes,
people
please.
know?
Yeah.
Okay, favorite park in the city. I like the Gatineau Park. Does that even count, the Gatineau Park?
No.
Yeah.
I like Dundonald Park.
Yeah, Dundonald.
Yeah.
I was expecting Dundonald.
We all know why. Yeah, no, it's a great park. Go there.
Yes.
Who is your queer idol? Oh my God. I'm just going to be honest, let's say Virginia Woolf.
Oh, cute.
Yeah, the new movie, Vita in Virginia, highly recommended.
Okay, I'm going to check that out.
Do you have any embellishment on your phone at the moment? Well, I mean, I like rose gold a lot, as you can tell. So just, it's like a rose gold cake.
Nice.
Pretty
That's it.
Wow.
Mine is describe your favorite Pride outfit. I would say anything leather.
Yeah.
Oh. Leather.
Hey. Okay, go
Pick it
ahead.
up. Pick it
Another
up.
one?
Woo! Yes.
Go.
Can I add Judith Butler to my
Yes,
response?
you can,
Yes.
yeah.
Excellent.
Oh yeah. Good old Judy.
More?
Yeah, more. Okay. Someone else start maybe.
Yeah, okay.
I'll start from this side. Best place to have a picnic in Ottawa, Dundonald.
We love that place.
It's the perfect beach day. Where do you go? Westboro Beach?
Dundonald.
In the city.
We have a lot of options.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Describe a memorable, in real life, rainbow sighting. Okay.
Oh, that's a good one.
It happened last month. We were driving home from dinner from a friend's house, and there was a double rainbow. A rainbow and then a rainbow. So we got out, and my wife and my son took pictures. I took pictures of them. We tried to take a selfie of us 3 with the rainbows in the background. It's on my Instagram.
So
Doubly gay.
Doubly gay. All right. Favorite farmers market in the area? Oh man, I don't even know.
Farmer
Beechwood
Doug.
Market's good.
Farmer Doug.
Farmer Doug. Oh, Farmer Doug in the parking lot at
Shanghai.
Man, that dude. Yeah, people love him.
Farmer Doug.
Farmer Doug. Support your local.
Very local.
Yeah.
All right.
More?
More.
No.
No, we're good. Okay, all right.
No more questions.
It's done.
No, I'm joking. This was awesome. This was really good. Thanks everyone for sharing your thoughts, opinions, love, laughs. It's great to meet you all.
Yeah.
Most,
Yeah.
It's
been a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. So hope everyone enjoyed it. We hope to have more of this spontaneous, awesome conversations that stir up a little bit of spice, but also make us hopeful for the future. Keep on fighting.
Yeah. Let's party like 1971.